Welcome, everyone. This meeting is being recorded by the City of Greenfield. If any other persons present are doing the same, you must notify the chairperson at this time. The chairperson reserves the right to remove or have removed any persons for profanity, threats, or any continued disruption during a meeting. We have a lot of items on our agenda to get to tonight, so depending on timing, we may not get to public comment. All right, review of previous month's meetings and meeting minutes. Anyone have any comments? Anything? All right, I move to approve last month's meeting and the special meeting minutes. All in favor? Aye.
Dr. Romano? $257. Okay.
Hi there. Sorry, just getting my setup figured out a little bit. Give me a second to motion.
Okay. And it's a motion.
Yes, I second.
Okay, good. Good. And do you have? He's.
Keeps.
Can we continue on, or do we have to wait for him?
He did second.
Oh,
Seconded
sorry. It was all chopped up. I didn't hear that. Okay.
Okay.
Nursing updates then.
Hi, we don't have a lot to report, but we did have a small outbreak at one of our facilities where there were 8 people that were COVID positive, and that's about 10% of the facility. I think that we're under control now. We haven't gotten any new cases in the last few days, so hopefully this is going to be the end of the spread, but I'll keep you updated. We're still getting a few anaplasmosis cases, Babiosa every week. We got some norovirus cases. And I think that that's it for infectious diseases this week. We're training new nurses in Montague. I've been covering Montague since they didn't have a nurse for their Maven. That nurse should be up and running by next week. We have a new nurse that's working for our PHE grant, Sarah Fisk, and she is up and running and taking cases. We also have Robin and Mary Ellen that are covering for the PHE. I think that is probably it. Jen, is there anything else that you wanted me to specifically talk about?
You did distribute more menstrual products to schools today and going around.
Yeah. So the donations that were given to ServiceNet, the ones that they couldn't use because they had abundance of supplies, we did donate to the Greenfield schools and the Montague school system, like toothpaste, toothbrushes, things like that, because they have a lot of students that are in need of those products. So they'll be kept in the nurse's office. And when they identify a student, they can send them home with like a little hygiene bag. And we got menstrual products through the COVID grants that we're putting in Montague, Greenfield. Greenfield already has them, but Montague and Deerfield school systems as well. And I delivered the products to Montague today, and I'll deliver them to Deerfield within the next week or so.
Awesome. The lunch update.
Thank you. I did not get any notifications from our LSP or the LSP for the PIP program. So I haven't had any updates or notifications. I'll discuss what we've been doing with the grant for the PIP grant that we're working on, the EPA grant that we're working on for the PIP process. So that'll be later on in our meeting, but I don't have any new updates since then.
Okay, restaurant updates.
Nicole, you want to start with food trucks and then I'll do friendlies because of that.
Sure. We've still been doing quite a few food truck inspections at vendor events. The most recent close. Oh, you're gonna do friendlies. And we have. I don't want to overlap what we have down below. Hold on. Well, I guess I could. Okay, so I inspected food trucks at the 4th of July, Green Mind, and Gear Jammer. Altogether, there probably was over 20 food trucks. Some of them were reoccurring, and some of them were new ones from out of state. Only a couple we had some issues with, but nothing too serious.
As for friendlies, we've been following friendlies closely. I think the board's aware of that. Earlier in July, and because there was a issue with we were called because of the fire department asking us to be there. I visited, and it was not clean. There was mold on items. There was food that was exposed. The sealants around the refrigeration system were not good. So we closed friendlies. The county electrical inspector was there, as well as the plumbing inspector, because there were plumbing issues with their dishwasher. They were washing dishes in cold water. I mean, they were running them through the dishwasher in cold and then hand washing it, which isn't acceptable. So the county plumbing inspector was there, the county electrical inspector was there because there was grease in the outlets as well as in their panel. So that had to get all replaced. And we reopened them on the 17th. And today I requested that Inspector Nicole and Inspector Jess visited the site. And either Nicole or Jess can tell you how it was at Friendly's today.
I think Jess should talk.
Okay, I will say that they both went and it went well. Jess, any comments?
Friendlies look great in comparison to last week when I had been there on day one. I've been in food service for approximately 20 years, and I would say, given what I had seen last week in comparison today, was probably 95% turnaround and a positive improvement. They were also extremely receptive to all of the feedback that was given to them and all of the corrections that needed to happen. The place looked great. I felt good leaving there. Felt like everybody was on board. We all had the same goals. Advise them to proceed forward, and that way we'll be in touch if needed.
Thank you. And Nicole, could you just talk about the public library because you inspected them before they opened?
Oh, sure. I'm sure a lot of you have been in the library. They have a front area where you can do hand washing, have a little snack. It's an area that is open for people after hours. So I took a look at that area, and there also is a prep area for, I'm not sure if they're going to have birthday parties or events there. I inspected that kitchen area. Everything looked amazing. Obviously, everything's brand new, top notch. So I permitted that a couple of days before their grand opening, and it looked awesome.
Madam Chair, do we need to do festivals if she covered festivals?
I think we're good. We can move on to housing.
Yeah, we're going to kind of break this down a little bit at a time because I did some with Nicole. Nicole did some, so it's kind of a little wacky. Do you want to do the video or you want me to, Nicole? Give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Thumbs up. You'll do it? Okay.
What happened there?
All right, I guess I'll do it. So, we were
Hold on a
at,
second. I'm like flipping back and forth because I'm trying to write the minutes and
oh,
flip
okay.
it at the same time. Okay. Okay.
So Lighted Woods.
Yeah. Okay. So Jen and I had been called out for not even for this, but there was a woman who had multiple security cameras in her windows that I don't know if she was using them for security. They were pointing straight into another tenant's windows. Straight into this other person's windows. I don't know if you know how Leiden Woods is set up, but the buildings are like this. So there's just a walkway in the middle. This poor woman over here couldn't even open her shades. Her electric bill was so high that she had to keep her lights on all the time. So we wrote up an order to correct to remove that front camera, in which that camera is no longer there. So we wrote it up as a nuisance. That's just another code the health department is able to use.
Could everyone mute who's not muted? Days in ServiceNet, I was called out there from a third party with evidence of bed bugs in one of the rooms. I went and inspected, and indeed there were bed bugs in one of the rooms. That guest then moved to one of the reserved rooms that the health department has with the city for our homeless, or not our homeless, Greenfield's homeless. So they're staying in there while that room is getting treated. There was also incidents of trash in the hallways, in bags, instead of the people bringing it to the dumpster. When I walked out back in the dumpster was not secure. It was open to the public, and there was garbage strewn all over. That was corrected immediately. The bed bugs are getting treated around the rooms as well as the hallways and the common space, since people are walking around. And so far, everything has been fine with other items that I found. 32 High Street's a joint inspection that I did with Nicole. Nicole's been monitoring it mostly. And Nicole, you want to go, and then I'll do my follow-up at the end of that.
We have actually been dealing with this case for a couple years. Finally, the ceiling of this apartment, number 6 and 32 High Street, fell in on the 4th of July. And the landlord did not want to put them up in a hotel. That is the requirement if something like that happens. Luckily, this person had someplace to go. So we wrote an order to correct to have the ceiling fixed. Finally, there is a roof being put on this apartment building. It is a flat roof building, so sometimes that can be a little tricky. We have also ordered an asbestos check because the tiles that fell down, some of them were older tiles and some of them are newer. Jen also did a lead check in the apartment, actually all the way up from the common areas to that apartment, where she found quite a bit of lead. So I think you sent your results into the state.
And the issue with the lead, even though the state takes it very seriously, if there's no one under 6, it's kind of lowered. But since they know we condemn that apartment, and they will rent it out once it's fixed up. They still are gonna go and evaluate. And I still didn't receive the asbestos report yet, but I know it was done. So the landlord has been compliant with the order to correct. 42 Coleraine Street. This again is a case that Nicole and I, and now Jess, have been involved in because we have a new thing with that case. But basically, it started out a little over a month ago with complaint of animal neglect and squalor conditions in one of the apartments in this building. Inspector Ducharme tried to get access and was not granted access into the home. I showed up on scene and spoke to the tenant. He did not have electricity at the time. He said that he will have the electricity turned on within a month. During that period, we worked with the animal control officer, Colleen. He was checking on the dog and making sure the dog was okay. We followed up a month later. There was no one on site, even though the order said so. The landlord was not responsive to Nicole until she told the tenant that he must respond. We showed up about 3 weeks ago, and the dog was out. We were called that the dog was out, and the dog was extremely skinny, had sores all over its body. It was definitely neglected and abused. We called the police since animal control was involved. They took the dog to the shelter. The shelter refused to take the dog until it was worked up for certain diseases. So the dog went to the hospital. It's now in the shelter. The MSPCA is now involved. They're doing an investigation on the welfare of the dog. The dog was signed over to the MSPCA by the woman who lived there. Another order was written up at that time. I wrote an order. Another order was written up at that time by Inspector Ducharme. And then this past weekend, I was contacted by dispatch and Lieutenant Kimball from the fire department about how the structure was unsafe, which was already written in our order to correct from a month prior. Nicole and Jess visited the site, and they will report on what they found this time, and buildings found. But the issue we were there for this time when the fire department called was a problem with the first floor apartment, not the second floor apartment that we've been working on and condemned. This was a different instance. And again, this tenant supposedly living in squalor, and there's insects all over the apartment. So we just couldn't get access because the door is locked, and we couldn't get in touch with the landlord, but I will have them continue this part. Nicole or?
I spoke with the landlord this morning, and unfortunately, he did not have any contact information for the tenant other than suggesting to contact her via Facebook. So we are continuously stopping in an effort to gain access to the apartment without a lot of cooperation from the landlord. And we'll continue to do that every day.
Mark, Commissioner Snow was there with inspectors Nicole and Jess. He deemed the property unsafe due to the rear egresses not being safe and the front porch. We were discussing condemning the entire building. He's trying to work with the landlord at this point to see if it can get fixed up appropriately. If not, we will be getting access and condemning the property due to its unsanitary and unsafe condition. The next two, 2 and 16 Harris Court. Again, Inspector Ducharme and myself went on site because of complaints of rodents. This housing complex, we have an amazing amount of rodents in this in this complex. We've had some people relocated, but there's not many places they can go. So we basically Nicole wrote a very direct letter, and she went out there today for another complaint of rodents. Nicole, I will have you discuss your letter.
So yesterday, after I received another phone call from a different part of the housing complex, I thought it would be a good idea to let them know that they have and they should know this, they have a serious rodent issue. And I think the rodents are inside the walls of this housing complex, because the inspections that we've done in these apartments, these people aren't living in squalor. There's no reason for these rodents to be here. Most of the apartments are very clean, to the point where these people have their food, their dry goods, everything in containers. They just have no reason to be there. And these rodents are actually coming up through where the radiator pipes go to the heat. So they're definitely coming out of the walls. So I said to the housing complex, I think you have an issue inside the walls of the housing complex. Not sure why that would be, but I think something else needs to be done besides regular extermination.
Our new case, 29 Alden Street. We were contacted by Officer Llewellyn of the police department that the main tenant was arrested, and their partner was admitted and to the hospital, and that he recommended we visit the site. We visited the site that morning, actually, because he called us. And the home was in very terrible shape. The ceilings were falling in, there was drawings all over the walls, there were bugs and insects. The sink was not even, the bathroom sinks were off of the plumbing. Doesn't look like anyone showered there for a very long time. The toilets weren't working. It was terrible, terrible conditions. We had to relocate one person living there to the Days Inn, which we did. That person, since they have some medical conditions, they're elderly, were then transported to the hospital that evening for some other issues. However, we were asked by the police department, since we were condemning the property, if we can board and secure it to prohibit anyone from entering the property anymore. So I ordered the building boarded and secured. And we are working with the landlord right now. And Nicole and Jess will give you other report, because we're still working on this case as of today. But basically, there's been multiple trespassing incidents where we have to keep calling the police. We had to get people removed. And this is with people working on the property. So it's kind of an ongoing situation that multiple departments in the city are working on. But I will have Nicole and or Jess discuss their findings over the last couple of.
Okay, so a significant other of the tenant thought it would be a good idea to park her unregistered vehicle on the property, live in the vehicle. Meanwhile, we have a bunch of posted signs, no trespassing signs. We even spoke to her face to face. We had the police department show up. We told her she couldn't be there. She even was arrested from the property for trespassing one time. And then yesterday we found her again sleeping in her vehicle there. Again, had her removed from the property, and the landlord, we finally told him he's going to just have to eat it and remove the vehicle from the property. And he put more posted signs up, no trespassing signs, just to make it more clear that you can't trespass on someone's property and just spot there. But that's where that is. We're trying to clean up the neighborhood. This house has been on our radar for a few years.
Nicole, you want to talk about 19 Highland? You're muted.
I was thinking out loud. 19 Highland Ave. We got a phone call from the worker of the landlord. They were trying to move in a new tenant on the 3rd floor. When they got there, they realized that the 2nd floor tenant had blocked the stairway with some of his items. As you know, in our code, you can't have any blocked egresses. He had blocked his egress and the 3rd floor's egress. And he also was using the front balcony and the 1st floor porch to store his items, which again, you can only use the space that is rented to you, which happened to be his apartment. So we wrote him an order to correct to get his items cleaned up. And he has 30 days to get those items taken care of.
Would you like to talk about 306 to 308 Wells?
Sure. Okay, so I started out with 306 Wells. That apartment had some significant leak damage in that side of the apartment building. Some rodent damage. So I had written an order to correct the landlord. He acted very quickly by pulling permits with our building department, hiring a contractor, and then there was some back and forth with the building department and some misinformation. But in fact, he was putting a new roof on the building. Then the landlord scared the next door neighbor, so I ended up doing an inspection in 308 and wrote up some things in 308's apartment. 308 had some water damage down in the basement, as well as a bulkhead that needed to be fixed, some rodent damage, but nothing super significant where they should be worried about any condemnation or anything like that.
The next one is the Weldon. We were called and notified by 2 people that there were people that were complaining about water damage and mold and other things, bats in their apartments. I was away at the time. I reached out to both of my inspectors saying, here's the email, there were phone numbers, reach out, call and contact. And when they went there, there were 1, 2, 3, 4 apartments. Only 1 person let them in. The other 3 had no idea why they were there because they didn't make a complaint. This was according to the tenants. The person that they did relocated into a hotel for the water damage and for it to get repaired. Since then, I spoke to the manager of the site as well as the vice president of the site. I have ordered them to correct their HVAC. I emailed Andy, who's the county plumbing inspector, to check this property as well. So he's doing that. To the Weldon, they have a policy that people have to go to them first, which is most buildings, I would assume, come to the landlord, then the health department. But there's rumors going around that the health department was going to, but whenever we have went to the Weldon and asked them to respond to any of the corrections they have. So they did order someone to come in and check their HVAC system. That's on the docket, and they have a plumber coming in as well. They're also getting roofing done on the top of the building as well as on patios. The patio was not done correctly. They're redoing it. So the Weldon is ongoing. And now we're up to 8 Coombs Ave, or 1 Coombs Ave. So this is a property that has been around for about a year, almost a year. We're coming up on an anniversary of when we bought and secured the property. When Nicole, myself, and Ruben visited the property, it was in terrible condition. We wrote orders to correct, and the landlord ignored them. He wouldn't fill the oil tank. It was very neglectful, and it was a terrible situation these people were living in at that time. We condemned it. We have, well, Nicole has been writing multiple letters to the landlord about the property, because after a year, the home can get demolished if there is no response from the landlord to do any work, and he has not responded or done one thing to this property. So we reached out to Roger Reed, who's our lawyer, and I think that the paperwork is moving forward to go to court for possible demolition of this property. Nicole, would you like to talk about 7 Park Street and Peanuts?
Sure. So I got a complaint from the dental office that is next to 7 Park Street that a child had dragged a peanut into the dentist office on one of their shoes, and another kid touched it, and they happened to have a peanut allergy. So somebody at 7 Park Street was throwing whole peanuts out their window to feed the squirrels, but they're throwing them into the parking lot. So I wrote it up as a nuisance. They do have some area in their parking lot at 7 Park Street where they can throw the peanuts. So there's no need for them to throw it in the parking lot of the dental office.
And that's our housing from the end of June till last Friday. Should we continue the unhoused update?
Go for it.
So the days in, as you know, there was an order to correct about the days in. Besides that, we have been working, I've been working with a lot of food organizations that have been trying to work with the days in for meals. Had multiple meetings with the leadership at ServiceNet, and basically it appears to be a communication breakdown between parties. So right now, the service providers, the food providers are not doing food there anymore. We were asked to cease donations from the public because they have no more room at the Days Inn, even though they said multiple times they were going to get a pod to store items. So basically, we're getting a lot of upset people that want to donate, and we're no longer accepting donations. As a matter of fact, we still have a ton of donations at 20 Sanderson, where if everyone here in this meeting was at 20 Sanderson, there wouldn't be enough room for people to sit. And they're refusing to take the items and saying to please donate it elsewhere. So, but so far, the service provider is ServiceNet, and they want everything to go through them for decisions. But there's been multiple meetings with the state and local leadership as well as state leadership. So we have a meeting actually on Friday for follow-up. I don't know if the person that resides in Wedgewood Gardens is here for this meeting. Is he here? So I don't think he is here, but as the board remembers, we started a permit for RV trailers, so we had know where people's locations are, and if someone fills out an application, they have to come in front of the board to discuss. One of the trailers that were there already moved to another RV park. This person was away from the RV park because it was closed due to flooding because it's wetlands. They were near the Days Inn a little bit over there, and now they're back. I think I saw them yesterday at Wedgewood Gardens. He did not pay the fee. We did have a delay in going to other people at Wedgewood, but word got around that we were asking for permits, hence someone left. And as you can tell, we had a lot of housing emergencies, so we didn't have time to go and say, hey, you need to fill out a permit. That's what it came down to ultimately. So that's it. He did not show, so his permit is moot right now. Nicole, do you want to talk about perks?
Sure. Hold on.
Lamp Black Road?
I've only had one perk, and that one was on a new lot all the way on the end of basically what meets Berniston and Greenfield. And it's a new lot in the middle of the woods. And that passed with flying colors. It was less than 10 minutes per inch. I haven't had a perk in a while, probably because of all the rain, but that one went really well.
Summer camp inspections.
I'm sorry, I'm just having some activity in the house. We had last month we had Center School, Camp Kiwani, as well as the YMCA gymnastics camp. I will talk about Camp Kiwani and their pools. There was a delay in inspecting their pools because of all the rain. They also had elevated chemical levels due to the ash that was in the smoke that was in the air that settled into the pools. So it took a while for the pools to kind of work the chemical balance out. When I went there for the pool inspection, it partially complied because their pool testing kit was not working properly. So every day they test their water and then send it to me for approval. I'm planning to go by, and they ordered a testing kit. It should be there hopefully by tomorrow, but I am going by to check their pools again. Sorry. The next school, the Center School, we were doing fine with that. Megan, do you want me to talk about the immunization issue, or do you want to talk about it at the Center School?
I can do it. So we had a little bit of a problem because the state requires people to be immunized, to be camp counselors, to be campers, things like that. We had some people that were immunized, but they had a hard time getting their records or didn't try to get their records. So when it came time for inspection, everyone wrote religious exemptions, even though it wasn't a true religious exemption because they had admitted that they had the vaccines, they just couldn't find the thing. So I called the state, they were looking into it, but in the meantime, we wrote a cease and desist until they got in the proper paperwork. So those particular counselors, of course, if any of them had a true religious exemption, we did not exclude them from being counselors. It was only the people that had said that they were waiting on paperwork or couldn't find it or whatever. So as of today, all but one have their acceptable paperwork in.
I had to give someone direction how to get on the meeting. I'm very sorry. YMCA gymnastics camp. Again, it was another cease and desist that was issued. Megan, would you like to talk about that?
That was another one where people didn't have their paperwork in. There was, I didn't have the CPR, the heads up, the heads up concussion classes, things like that, the EpiPen training. I think next year, what we're going to do is people are going to have to get their paperwork in a minimum of 2 weeks before camp starts, all of it, their medical records, everything, so that we can actually inspect and it'll be cleared, because people are not getting their medical records in until the day the camp starts. The same thing happened with the YMCA camp that was at Stoneleigh Burnham. I was there the day that students were already there looking through medical records and people didn't have what they needed. It was just ridiculous. So next year, I think that people don't get permitted unless they have everything in 2 weeks ahead of time.
And just so everybody's aware, I send out the camp application with all the forms they need and all the information they need. I mail every single one out on March 1st. And I wrote a letter saying, you need it in the office by the end of this date, May. People come in June, and then they beg us to see them, but it's really difficult to do that, as you can imagine, when you see all these complaints or festivals and all those events, and then you have to stop. And then, so we're really going to be a little bit stricter with camps next year and say, these are deadlines and these are real deadlines. So you have to work with us. I mean, so I think people got the hint this year because we really cracked the whip a lot. And I'm going to be doing, like I said, doing follow-up inspections very shortly. So, Chair, we have 3 different complaints that need to be addressed. I'm not sure which one do you want to do it in order?
Yeah, we can just do it in order.
Is that time for each guest? What you would like,
Yeah.
and I would set my timer?
Yep.
Okay. So the first complaint that's on is for Mr. Ben Minor.
Yeah, hello, can everybody?
There's an ongoing issue with Jim's tree service. I could hear you. I will
Okay.
have Mr. Minor begin.
I wasn't really expecting to hear from the Board of Health because it seemed like the Board of Health had no interest in addressing this after a really protracted struggle talking about this 2 years ago. Long and short of it is that our planning board permits Mr. Elwell to operate machinery which violates state noise restrictions and also violates a number of local zoning ordinances. He was supposed to present some kind of noise survey before this decision was made. Their lawyer says that they could only find one person to do it and then it would take a year and it would cost too much money. So the town just said, okay, then don't bother. They did this behind the backs of everybody who was in a butter to Jim's tree service, basically bending over backwards to allow one business owner to terribly negatively impact the quality of life for the entire neighborhood. In the spring and summertime in particular, we're frequently awakened at 7 o'clock in the morning to this noise from chainsaws, which go for 15 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, you never know. They start really early. The town pretends like they put a restriction on him by saying that he could only run his wood chipper, which is about the loudest thing that anybody's ever heard, only for up to 3 hours at a time between the hours of, I think, 1 and 4 p.m. It doesn't matter. He's breaking the law when he runs that thing. He's breaking the state Board of Health laws. And just suffice to say, it's ridiculous. Nobody thinks it's normal. Last 2 years ago, we went around and spent like 1 hour gathering signatures. We got like 20 something of them. We submitted them to various Board of Health and to the building inspector, the mayor's office. The building inspector has been completely MIA. And every time that I've pushed this point, the mayor's office comes back and basically throws the site plan in my face and says, look, we got a site plan that says you can do it, which is basically a site plan that says, here's this document stating that we're going to allow him to break the law. It's not okay. It's not okay with any of my neighbors. I'm one of the few neighbors who has been a squeaky wheel about this. Most of them don't think that anybody's going to do anything. And several of them have expressed to me that they are afraid of Mr. Elwell. And nobody can really give me an exact reason why, but people say things like, oh, he's hurt people. From what I can see, Mr. Elwell is a real bully who has gotten his way an awful lot by having a lot of money and by being the loudest jerk in the room and intimidating people. I'm not going to stop making noise about this. It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. There's no reason that that operation should be allowed in a neighborhood like this. It's completely hostile to everything else. He spreads all over that piece of property. He covers the sidewalk half the time. Parts of it, you can't even see the sidewalk because it's so pounded down by wood pulp. He's parking his vehicles on the sidewalk. He just exploits the situation. None of the other businesses on Wells Street are a problem, only his. You know, there were some big lights from a place that moved in up the street in Wells Street. And, you know, I complained to my local councilwoman, Ginny, and they got it taken care of because they said, look, you can't do that. You got to change the lights. And that's the way things are supposed to go. I don't understand why the mayor's office has gone and bent over backwards to protect Jim Elwell and allow him to continue to do this, but it's not acceptable. There should be a cease and desist order put on the property, and there should be a joint meeting between you and the building inspector and the mayor's office to put an end to this. It's ridiculous. It's been going on for years, and it was done basically behind the backs of the community because they knew no one was going to be okay with this.
I was emailed just now by Mr. Elwell. He was trying to get on. I don't know if he's going to make it to now. He's couldn't use the link, so hopefully he will be here to speak his part. If he does show up late, would he be able to speak, Chair? Does the board have anything to say before we move on?
I don't think so.
So indeed, there is a special, sorry, that was the timer. There is a special permit. As everyone knows, that's been that Mr. Minor did mention. However, I want to just clarify the chainsaws, although no one likes to hear this, chainsaws are considered part of normal equipment, and he's allowed, just like anybody's allowed to use a chainsaw. At what time they
Untrue,
start
it's
is
not domestic equipment in his case.
Mr. Minor, I
Chainsaws are
didn't,
viewed as domestic
Mr. Minor,
equipment.
I did not interrupt you. Please show me the same respect. Thank you. I think that chainsaws are allowed to be used. It's part of normal equipment. And I'm not saying that it's acceptable at the times he's using it, but he is allowed to use it. And again, this is going up to zoning. So the next complaint is about the fairgrounds of an event that happened this past weekend. It is the Gear Jammer event. Mr. Tousley was the man who initially brought the complaint forward to the board, but he cannot make the meeting tonight due to an incident in his family. We've had multiple complaints about the Gear Jammer event. I have spoken to Mr. Mike Nelson, who runs the I'm sorry, I'm trying to get my paperwork together, who runs the fairgrounds, and I have reached out back and forth with with the person that was in charge of the festival, but we've been playing a major game of phone tag. But I just wanted to let the board know that they did violate a mass general law, and that it was written up and it was reported. And I just wanted everyone to be aware, because it was for truck idling, and trucks are not allowed to idle for more than 5 minutes. So I think Kim is here, even though she's not on the agenda. I need the board's permission to have her speak, because on behalf of Mr. Towsley and the rest of the people that are here, if that's okay.
That's fine.
Okay, Kim, I'm going to start now.
Thank you. My name is Kim Walcott, and I'm here on behalf of Pine Hill Park Condo Association. I'm here to inform the Board of Health that of the frustration and dismay that many residents of our association experienced during the Gear Jammer event at the fairgrounds last weekend. This type of event, along with the prior weekend's monster truck event, really negatively impacted the quality of life and health of our usually quiet residential neighborhood. Residents of our association, the Solar Village, and neighbors all along Laurel and Fairview Streets experienced the most egregious invasive volume of 18-wheel vehicles making thousands of trips in and out of the neighborhood. The constant gas, fumes, beeping, traffic, and the speed of trucks going down Laurel Street using Jake brakes was over the top. The fairgrounds property was so jam-packed with these rigs, I shudder to think what would have been the case if an evacuation was suddenly needed. I understand you've received many letters describing the air quality and noise pollution from this event. I hope the health department, in conjunction with the licensing, zoning, and fire departments, can use this information to implement new guidelines for future events around the city and especially at the fairgrounds. In conclusion, I would like to point out that our association has in the past had a very good, longstanding mutual relationship with the fairgrounds, even with the larger events like Franklin County Fair and the Green River Festival. These events were certainly extreme and the exception, and did not have nearly the impact on our little residential areas up here that this past week's event and the monster truck event had. So I appreciate your time letting me speak here on Ben's behalf and on the behalf of the whole association. Thank you.
Mr. Nelson, would you, I think you're still here. Would you like to speak?
Sure. Yeah, I'll just take a quick moment. I'll defer most of the time to Mr. Conrad, as it was the event that he promoted and brought to the community. You know, I will second the comments by Kim. We certainly strive to have a good relationship, and I think in general we have done so. And I appreciate you saying that, Kim, because we do indeed try to make things work with our community around us. You know, the fairgrounds is really undergoing a metamorphosis. It's a facility that not too many years ago was not very well utilized. It was a facility that was used really just for the fairgrounds, or just for the fair. And certainly the year and a half or so that of the COVID restrictions, when there was no noise at all because nothing was able to open, certainly gave a new sense of quiet to a neighborhood that is not necessarily a quiet neighborhood. So while I absolutely agree with Kim's and all the complaints for that matter, desire for you know, a little bit of peace and quiet, it also is a fairgrounds community, and so there does need to be that mutual respect of you know, not having atrocious noises that are intrusive to the neighborhood. And I'll be the first to admit, and I did that evening, that there were a lot of the horn blowing was way over the top, kind of startled me out of my seat a few times. So, you know, I think there is a middle ground here. I think we can find ways, not only with this event, but with other events that go on there, to continue these community conversations, to find ways to make them a little less intrusive and to really work together to continue to build our community. Greenfield as a whole is really undergoing a big change with a lot of exciting things happening, not only at the fairgrounds, but across the community. And I think we're just going through some growing pains is really, I think, what we're experiencing. But I'm wholeheartedly committed to finding ways to continue working with each other to make that growth, but in a respectful manner. Thank you.
Sam, I sent you a message.
Yeah, he can speak next.
Mr. Elwell, if you're on, before we continue, you can speak. Mr. Minor was here complaining about the times the chainsaws are on and other items, and if I wanted to know if you had anything to say.
Can you hear me?
Not to interrupt, Jennifer, but I'm the organizer of the truck show. Will I be allowed to speak about the truck show after this gentleman?
Yes, but this was just to complete the other part.
Thank you.
Mr. Elwell, are you on?
Can you hear me? Or
Yes.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I didn't hear Mr. Minor speak, so I just joined the meeting. So I don't know what to say as far as the chainsaws. I mean, we're allowed to. The noise restrictions were only between the hours of 1 and 4 for an hour and a half, and that was for the chipper and the wood processor. There was nothing about chainsaws that we couldn't use chainsaws after 7 o'clock. So I don't know what he said. So it's hard to discuss what he talked about because I didn't hear it.
He did mention that the chainsaws begin after 7 a.m. and that's how him and his wife wake up every day, pretty much. And it's a disruption to the neighborhood.
Okay. Well, I mean, we don't use chainsaws every single day at the shop. So there's only a few days. There's only a guy that splits wood 2 days a week. And so we just make sure there's enough wood to cut up for him. So it's not every single day. So that's definitely an exaggeration. But we are allowed to do that. Correct?
I am assuming that according to the special permit, which I'm not involved in, yes. Mr. Minor said he did not say every day, according to the chat. I know you can't see. So, I mean, I don't want to, I mean, it's up to the chair how she wants to handle this part right now. If you want Mr. Minor to speak again, but I just don't know how you want to handle this.
I think he had his time to speak and we can just move on to the next one on the agenda.
Mr. Conrad wanted to say something from that held the event. Thank you, Mr. Elwell. Mr. Conrad?
Sure, thank you, everyone. First and foremost, our event is a family event to raise money for children with autism. And we've donated over $250,000 in 5 years to the Doug Flutie Jr. Foundation. And we are projecting our donation from the event this past weekend is upwards of $90,000 for autism research. So where we do acknowledge there were some noise problems, we feel it was a safe event. I did a walkthrough with the fire marshal or the chief of the fire department during the event. He said everything looked good. He didn't cite any problems when he walked the event with me. We were in the understanding that the noise curfew for the weekends was 10 p.m. I believe we went over to about 10:15 or 10:30. So when Mike Nelson alerted me that the noise was continuing, we went around to truck after truck and told them to cease and desist. And as far as the neighbors complaining about traffic in the neighborhood, any major event at that fairgrounds is going to cause excess traffic. I'm assuming a fair that goes at the fairgrounds for anywhere from 5 to 6 days in length is going to produce much more traffic than our 2-day event. So I don't see an issue with traffic. As far as noise goes, we will make every possible step to tell people there is no air horns or Jake breaks allowed at next year's event, if you want us back. And we would like to come back. We thought the fairgrounds was fantastic. We brought thousands of dollars into the community with our event, hotel rooms, restaurants, various stores. And like I said, we don't profit at all from the event. We do it all from the goodness of our heart, and we are donating upwards of $95,000 for autism research. In fact, the chief of the fire department has a relative with autism. I believe it's a grandson. So he commented on how great the event was. As far as trucks idling, we could do away with that as well. We were properly licensed by the licensing board. My wife and I went up and sat in on the meeting. We received thumbs up from everyone and all positive comments. And we received the go-ahead for the event. And we described that there would be in excess of 600 trucks at the show. Oh, that should have clarified any traffic situations with the neighbors. As far as the idling goes, gentlemen were only idling trucks because they wanted air conditioning because it was so hot. But we could put an end to that. Other than that, I really don't have much to say. We would like to be back. We have been at other venues, Hudson, Mass, in a neighborhood, Brimfield, Mass, in a neighborhood with retirement communities around the Brimfield Winery, and Monadnock, New Hampshire at Winchester Speedway, with residences right in back of the Speedway. And the same situation occurred at each event, just like what occurred this past weekend, and we had no complaints. So this is the first community that has complained about our event. We've had no incidences as far as public safety goes, no incidences as far as alcohol goes, no incidences whatsoever. And these are the first complaints we have received in 6 years of this event.
Thank you, Mr. Conrad.
Absolutely.
I have to read some comments that are in the chat. So let me just, it's gonna go off, hold on. Kim stated it's not about the noise, but the air quality and constant running of engines. Trucks were left idling a lot over the weekend. That she is asthmatic and could not sit outside any day that they were there. She does not dispute the fundraising side of the event. And she said idling caused a major air quality program, and the community felt very differently about the impact of our neighborhoods. This complaint is valid. So he did address the air quality issue. As far as the health department, it is, you can't leave trucks idling. It's a Mass General law for more than 5 minutes. And there's some businesses here that are even aware that in the winter, if we get complaints of trucks idling, we have to say to stop, because it could bother people with respiratory issues. Everyone that's putting things in the chat, it's open meeting law, so please, if you have something to say, please say it. But does the board have anything to say before we move forward about the fairgrounds?
It seems like the event coordinator is now aware of some of the complaints, and that if they do decide to come back, that they're willing to work with that and change the things that need to be changed, as well as with Mike Nelson running the fairgrounds, that hopefully everyone can kind of talk together and make things work for next year.
Ms. Griswold made a comment saying, even if you've heard no complaints elsewhere, you need to listen to these complaints. Ms. Griswold, that's why we're here. So Mr. Nelson has his hand up.
Madam Chair, do you mind if I just jump in for a quick second? One last comment.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So I just want to add that Bob has offered, Bob, as you know, is now the event coordinator. And you've heard that he's kind of learned some more information specifically about idling this evening that I don't think he necessarily realized. Bob and I have already started to have some discussions about potentially rerouting some of the smaller vehicles up Wisdom Way. I know that's something that the Laurel Street people, of course, are speaking about, is the traffic and the increased amount of traffic. Obviously, it's a decent amount of trucks. He was having all of the trucks go up Laurel Street this year just because that's the easiest way to get into the fairgrounds through that back gate. But in conversation with him earlier this week, while we were starting to brainstorm solutions, one of the ideas we had was the smaller trucks, the ones that don't actually have the trailer on them, they're just the cabs, which, correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, but I think it was greater than 50% of them. Is that accurate?
Correct, yeah.
So greater than half of them could actually go down River Street and take the right-hand turn onto Wisdom Way, completely bypassing Laurel Street entirely. So, you know, that's one of the kind of options that we've started to think about to try to help minimize and lessen not only the traffic, but the noise and air pollution on Laurel Street. Because, you know, I certainly understand their concerns and complaints. And I'm definitely open to trying to find ways, creative ways like that, to find solutions that kind of help everybody out. So I know Bob is open to ideas and solutions as well. And Kim, as the association president, kind of the spokesperson, if you will, for Pine Hill, perhaps you and I and Bob, if you're willing to, could get together sometime in the coming future and brainstorm additional ways that we could potentially lessen the impact on Laurel Street, if that's something you're willing and interested in doing so.
So I'm open for that. I mean, we would like to come back. We like the community. We like the fairgrounds. We think it's a good fit. So we're willing to work with you. I need to reiterate though that the trucks were not idling during the daytime hours. During the daytime hours, all the trucks were off. I made passes every 5 minutes around the fairgrounds because I was parking all the vehicles at the fairgrounds. Basically, I parked about 75% of the trucks. And there was no idling going on, only in the nighttime hours when guys needed air conditioning. And there again, a lot of the trucks to power their air conditioning, they have what's called an APU unit on the truck. It's a green APU. And that doesn't work off of the diesel engine. That works on its own. So that wouldn't have promoted diesel fumes. The APU is similar to a generator that a camper would use. And that provides the air conditioning for the truck. And not to denote anyone's smelling of diesel fumes, but I worked in the woodworking industry for 30 years, and I have very sensitive sinuses and a number of allergies. And in all honesty, I smelled no diesel during the course of the event. And like I said, I drove around continuously monitoring the whole show. But that's not to say we don't want to work with the residents. And I would be glad to sit down with you guys and talk it over, as well as the fire chief. Like I said, the fire chief was there with me in the middle of the day on Saturday after all the flooding. And, you know, he didn't see any issues. So I would assume, you know, he would have been aware of this idling law as well. And like I said, when he was there, the trucks weren't idling at that point anyway, because that was during the daytime, probably noon, 1 o'clock. But we
just don't allow open discussion during the meeting because we have an agenda to follow. I don't mean to cut you off. Ms. Cheryl Fox had her hand up for a while now. Ms. Fox?
Yes, I appreciate the philanthropic nature of this event, and but still have to say that between the noise and the air pollution, which if you'd been present, you would have seen what was going on there. It was an abomination. And my larger point has to do with what the fairground is doing right now. There was the monster trucks, there was this event next week, it's the motorcycles. And I think that taking into account that this is
this is a neighborhood that has a nursing home in it. It has a couple of condo places and many other neighborhoods. It's not an appropriate place for this kind of activity. And I hope that Mr. Nelson will eventually see the light on that. Thank you.
We still have a few more items on our agenda. Kim, could you make your comment?
I just want to say you definitely will be hearing from us. You suggested in a letter to Ben that to pull together a group of people formally by letter. You can count on that happening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jennifer, can I say one more thing?
We actually have to get through this agenda. We end at 6:30. I'm sorry, Mr. Conrad. Unless the chair, what does the chair want? I actually.
We need to move on.
We're now going to Marion Griswold's complaint on aromatic fillers and odors. Just the background of this to the board. This has been an ongoing issue. The filtration system, the smell from aromatic fillers was worse in the past, but a lot of corrections were done and a lot of updates were done on this building. Anytime we've had a complaint of any type, anytime I needed his MSDS, anything, he was always, please don't put things in chat right now. You could speak in public. He was always willing to work on any of the projects, but Ms. Griswold's here because she has a concern. So Ms. Griswold, let me just set my timer and then you can go.
Okay, thank you, Marion Griswold. I live across the street from Aromatic Fillers at 46 Hastings Street. I have pretty much made all of my comments already in letters both to the health department and to the planning board or the planning department. I appreciate the things that Mr. Green has done. As I said in my first letter, he's done a lot of improvements to the property. I don't argue with his right to be there. I only argue with the smell in the neighborhood. It's very, I am not the only one or the first one to complain. I believe, as far as I know there was a complaint started at least as far long ago as 2018. I don't know what year Aromatic Fillers started working there. There have been many complaints from neighbors on Haywood Street. I know that. I've talked to a few of my own neighbors. Some don't mind at all. Others mind a great deal. And I just don't accept the fact that nothing can be done, although I've been told that they've done everything they can. And I think that if that's the case, then this manufacturing doesn't belong in a residential neighborhood. I also question whether I believe that the business should have been required to apply for a special permit. Because although a special permit was granted, I believe in 2014 or 15 to another applicant for small manufacturing, that applicant never operated in that building. And so that special permit is void. And before, there has never been manufacturing in that building before. So I really question the legality of that operation, but mainly I'm just asking that the odor stop.
Before Mr. I don't know if Mr. Green has anything to say, but I just wanted to say that the fire department was called out, and I just wanted to read the statement from the fire department. They were called out there to check their filters. And Captain Smith wrote, Jen, on Wednesday, the fire department received a call from a neighbor checking to see if we had a list of chemicals on site. I do not have permits or have been in the building aside from community 911 EMS training in the past. I met with the owner, Todd Green, who gave me a tour. He explained the process of filling candles along with other scented products. None of the products had warnings for hazard to health, flammable, or water reactivity. I took a photo, basically was warning not to dump into the environment, rivers or streams. I noticed the sprinkler system was overdue for inspection, and they are making arrangements to have it inspected. The place seems orderly. Exits were well marked.
Oh, you were muted.
I was on
Jennifer.
mute that whole time.
No, just the last couple of seconds. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Mr. Green, do you have anything to say before?
You're on mute, Mr. Green. We didn't hear you.
I do not have anything to say. I can defer to my attorney. She understands the process and what we are doing.
Yeah, it's I understand that the business anyway, I put it all in writing in my letters. I just don't accept having that odor in my neighborhood, in my yard, in my front yard, my backyard. I don't like it. I don't bring scented candles into my home, and I should have the right not to have to breathe in that scent if I don't choose to.
Just of note, I get, every time Ms. Griswold does smell the candles, either myself or Nicole visits the site. We visited, as you know, Sam, we went with Councilor Bottomley to the site. And I just wanted to state that I was communicating with Ms. Griswold this weekend. She smelt it, I think, on Saturday or Sunday, and I don't think he was open. I don't think Aromatic Fillers is open on the weekends. So again, there's no rhyme or reason to the smell. The DEP was involved. They are currently involved. They've had people, walking around. I don't think it's a smell, at least to me, that has been constant or longer than a certain amount of allotted time that the DEP states, even though people are sensitive to smells. So I don't know if you have anything to say, Chair, but I don't know if Mr. Green's lawyer has anything. I don't know who's next.
Councilor Bottomley would like to speak.
Yeah, first I want to thank you.
Ms. Griswold, Ms. Griswold, I appreciate your assistance with this meeting, but that's up to the chair or myself to say who can speak, but thank you. Councilor Bottomley.
Yeah, I wanted to thank you, Director Hoffman and Todd Green, for meeting with me. The issue's been going on for a while, and 5 years ago, at least, I live farther away. The situation did get a little better, and I think that was mostly from the result from closing doors. When the building first started, almost every door would be open with fans blowing out. So I didn't really see any other signs of remediation of this set when I was there. I do want to say that I think it's reasonable in a residential zone neighborhood that people should have the expectation and the right to breathe clean air and be free of strong chemical scents. And I would also agree it's intermittent, but it's persistent. It happens every week. It's persistent, and it may just be, it's a theory. I don't know anything, but it may be when these doors open. I've been trying to take notes on this, that the scents get into the neighborhood. And my hope was that we could find some way that wouldn't be terribly expensive to work with Mr. Green to try to come up with some solution, because his business is impressive. And I want it to be successful, and I want the neighbors to be happy too. And I have a few questions that you may be able to answer that I haven't heard. I mean, can we have access to the chemical list of because I don't know what's being released into the air. I've never seen a chemical list.
I have them on record if you need to see them.
Okay, and the other question I had was, there were a couple of things in our conversation that came up, which this was not very long ago. But it was identified, I know Mr. Green had said he wasn't sure what more he could do, and I certainly don't know. And I was wondering if there are any consulting groups or agencies that might be able to evaluate the space and provide recommendations. And third, if there were any grants anywhere that could help cover these costs, or if there was any way the city could help cover. So those were my main questions.
I know that the on a regulation level, the DEP was there and did their inspections. And I don't know about any grants. I'm sure I could look into that. But Sam, do you were at the site as well? Do you have any comments?
It was very helpful to go and get the tour and see how everything was run. Mr. Green spoke about how the garage doors are now closed, which I'm sure helps mitigate plenty of the smells, as well as there being some filters. I'm not really sure what else can be done past that. There's plenty of businesses all around town that also has some type of odor with them, but we still need the businesses in town. So I don't really know where we can go from here other than what he has already done.
Sorry, may I respond to that?
Sure.
Yeah, I just have to say, I don't find that statement acceptable. This is a residential zone. And I know there's grandfathered clauses here, but it's in the middle of a residence. And I can tell you, it's a strong chemical smell. It's not pumpkin spice latte or something we're smelling. So when it happens, I'm just saying it is a legitimate concern from my perspective. And I've also seen a lot of escalating anger and frustration. I heard that from neighbors and I heard it from Mr. Green. So I think there's legitimate concerns on both sides. I just really want to find a way to work together because the neighbors aren't going anywhere. The business is not going anywhere. So I feel like it's in our best interest to try to find a solution. And I would say, I've been noting this, I see the doors open. So I know it's hot, but I really believe that when those doors are open, sometimes it'll come out in a cloud and stay in an area for several hours and dissipate. Maybe it's that simple. Maybe there is a simple solution that someone may even be able to help with that. I don't know, but I really would like to keep a dialogue going because otherwise I'm afraid they'll just be escalating tension, which is not, I just don't think it's good for anyone.
Yes, AJ?
I'm sorry, my name is actually Allison Bartlett O'Donnell. I represent Mr. Green and Aromatic Fillers. He has taken great efforts to install new charcoal filters throughout the plant. I think it's unreasonable for him to be required to keep his doors closed 24/7. He has very small windows when he has trucks coming in to remove his products. The doors are open for a limited period of time. In fact, I don't believe they're open for more than perhaps 15 to half an hour at a time. If there is any scent that comes out, it's minimal. I've been at the plant. I've gone through the entire facility. I didn't smell anything. And I had many family members who worked at Yankee Candle, which is far more, has a much more infiltrating smell and effect in their areas. He's very well versed in his industry. He's worked in numerous other plants. He's explored every other option, and there are no other real options in terms of mitigating any possible minimal smell in the environment. He doesn't work with hazardous chemicals. There's no concern about anything being deleterious to the neighborhood. So I think he's been a very good neighbor. He's certainly improved the facility. It's a beautiful space in comparison to certainly what it looked like years ago. And I think he's a very positive community member, and he certainly is trying to work with his neighbors to be a good neighbor.
Chair, do you want to say anything? Because there's someone with their hand up. I just don't know how you want to proceed.
I think we should probably move on to the next thing because we still have a lot on the agenda to cover.
I just want to say, I have to say one quick thing. I think Marion should be allowed to speak because a state trooper came to her door and issued her a no trespass and no communication with the company. So this may be her only time to speak and address the people here. And I have to say, I'm not sure that I appreciate having a lawyer here. I did not come with lawyers prepared. So I just wanted to work with Mr. Green and the neighbors, and obviously there's a problem. So I actually take offense at that, and I take offense, I live here. You do not live here. I live here. So I would like Ms. Griswold to speak if possible. I think that's important as a community member and as a city councilor.
May I speak?
Briefly.
Two things. One is, it's not just an issue of open doors, because the doors can be closed up and there's still smell coming out of the building. As I've said in my letters, 7:30 on a Sunday morning, 9:30 on a Tuesday night, it's completely unpredictable and intermittent. So it's not just the issue of the doors. And secondly, I think to dismiss this, as Mr. Green's lawyer just did, and other people have said, well, I went there and there was no smell. Either you have to be saying that we neighbors are lying, or you have to believe that we have a legitimate complaint and it simply didn't smell when you were there. It's not all the time. I have said that repeatedly. It is not constant. It's intermittent. It comes and goes. Sometimes it's a tiny bit, sometimes it's a lot. But I should have the right not to be subjected. I and my neighbors don't choose to smell that smell. And it's wrong that that smell is being forced upon us.
Updates on grants?
Sorry. So the intermunicipal grant, we hired a nurse who's now covering Leverett and Shutesbury. We have ordered inspectional software for the entire collaboration, as well as hardware, so we could all be doing our inspections uniformly throughout the collaborative. In order to be everything set up, I entered all 202 restaurants and food establishments into that computer database for Greenfield, and everyone's doing the rest for their own municipalities. As for the EPA PIP grant, the grant was moved to the second phase, so that's really, really exciting. I meet with Jen and Jack on a weekly basis. We're now obtaining census information in the area. I did a tour of the neighborhood with Jen, who's helping with the research, like I said. So she has an on-site perspective. So when we talk about the property, she's aware of the areas that we're discussing. So even though the grant wasn't officially approved, we're still trying to make a lot of headway in gathering information. We already have our initial survey looked at, and we're going to be giving it to the PIP group to check to see their thoughts on it. And that's what's going on with grants. In the parking lot. And I know Dr. Lepery will get excited because we're talking about mosquitoes. We do get monitored by the Pioneer Valley Mosquito Control District. I sent the last report over to the board. And we have paid our dues for them to keep monitoring. I paid that this past week. But I just wanted to see if I sent the reform bill out as well. And I just didn't know if anyone had questions or wanted me to do any follow-up with anything regarding mosquitoes, specifically Dr. Lepery.
I think at the moment, the most important thing is going to be monitoring and seeing, certainly since the beginning of the summer, mosquito numbers were fairly lighter, but given the recent rain we've had, numbers have exploded. I imagine that will be reflected in when the counts come in. And, trying to think about mitigation efforts, really water source reduction in backyards, things like that, are certainly reasonable to reinforce. I think fogging as a whole has somewhat limited utility depending on when you're doing it and how you're doing it. But really the source reduction, breeding source reduction is going to be really important. And, as we move through the spring or through the summer and into the fall, that's really when you're going to start to see mosquito-borne disease, triple E, West Nile virus start to increase. And that's going to be a result of the more mosquitoes that we're seeing.
Thank you, Dr. Lepre. Finally, there is somebody new that has spoken at the meeting already. Their name is Jess Mayenzo Tanner. She's waving. Hi, we're welcome. I wanted the board to welcome her as our new health inspector. She comes with many, 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 many years of food service experience. She's amazing and she's getting along with our department great. And Jess, do you want to say anything?
Hi, thank you. I look forward to being part of the community and using my decades of experience to help with public health.
Hold on one second.
Welcome. We're glad to have you.
Welcome.
Walk with a doc. Is Dr. Romano here? I see a smiley face. Okay, Dr.
Yes, Dr. Romano is here.
Dr. Romano, do you want to give an update?
So no, major groundbreaking updates. Our first walk is scheduled for Thursday, August 17th, 6 p.m. I believe at Highland Park. Just continuing to kind of spread the word, get the word out so that we have good turnout for our first event. I've been working with folks here at the hospital as well as with Board of Health to put out some flyers and some promotional materials. Thank you, Board of Health, for the funding. And yeah, so if you folks who might want to go on a little stroll, talk a little medicine briefly, and mostly just kind of encourage healthy behaviors, send them our way.
We've heard a lot of buzz about that. I just wanted to let you know, and it's been on, I can't remember, I know the abbreviation, but everyone's very excited about it. So I just wanted to tell you there's a lot of buzz in the neighborhood. So I think you're going to see a nice crowd. Dr. Lepre, do you need to?
No, I was hoping he could send me some information on it because I would love to be able to promote this through our office as well. And if he would permit any women's health people, I think this is something that we could get behind as a group as well and provide a little bit of a groundswell.
Yay, I will send more
I'll send you an
info.
email.
If Dr. Romano was also up to be voted and to extend his term. And since he did not say, no, I don't want to do it, it got forwarded to City Council for a vote in August. So it looks like he's having fun. See, he's smiling. So that's a good sign. And I just wanted to cover briefly about the sewage overflow from the recent rains. The city has been really keeping tabs on trying to get everybody informed when there's overflow. This happens when there's a lot of rain, as we've had, and there's warnings that people can't be in the water for 48 hours where the waters were affected. I just wanted to let everybody know that the timing was perfect. There's the EPA and DEP were happy with our response and are getting the word out. So I just wanted the board to be aware. Madam Chair, I know that Mr. Green might have had a comment to make, and I wanted to know if that's okay, if he can make it.
That is fine.
Mr. Green, are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me? So Mr. Bottomley made a comment during his portion about Miss Griswold being trespassed by the state police or whatever law enforcement agency that visited her this week. I wanted to comment on that and why that happened. That took place because I believe Thursday, it was either Wednesday or Thursday, Mrs. Griswold entered the building at 38 Haywood Street through the roll-up door on Hastings Street across from her house. She walked into my factory, talked to an employee, the employee escorted her out, and then later on she was witnessed in my side yard climbing on the fence trying to look in the window. Don't make that face. I guess I shouldn't talk to Mrs. Griswold, but she's making a face.
That's absolutely not true.
You should be careful what you're saying because my building has cameras and that's where I'll leave it. And I have
No
you on
back and
camera.
forth, no back and forth, no back
Okay.
and forth. This is a meeting, please, like, give Todd the chance to speak. Thank you. Sorry,
So
Mr. Green.
it's okay. I do have photographic video evidence of Mrs. Griswold entering my building and then being escorted out and then entering the side of my building on the east side and leaning on the fence, trying to gain access to my building. I have that video. So I asked the lawyer, I asked Allison to represent us in dealing with this because beyond the dispute of the odor or whether it's okay to be here or not, it is safety, liability, and safety. Mrs. Griswold's safety, my liability as a building owner to not have people get hurt, and my employees' safety. So in respect to her safety, that morning our roll-up door was open because we were moving a 6,500-pound piece of equipment from Greenfield to Deerfield. It is not safe when you do not know what's going on to enter the building and not through the front door, not through meeting at the way other customers or clients or vendors come in, but coming through a work door. 2, liability, that's pretty common sense. If she was injured or as a result of being in my building, I would be responsible for her health and safety of my employees. I don't fear Mrs. Griswold in the least. I believe she's probably a very pleasant person, but in the day and age, people are unhappy. They want to take the law into their own hands. They want to come in to buildings and do bad things. It's a fact of life in America. I think I'm not claiming that she did that at all. I'm not saying that she's not peaceful. We did have a resident before on Riddell Street come into our building yelling, screaming, swearing, and he was also trespassed. That person was a bigger safety concern. So I addressed the part of why the trespass happened, and I have the evidence, and that's why that took place. The other piece that I comment on based on her commentary was this building was a Greenfield trap and die manufacturing and warehousing building since 1900. It has always been manufacturing and warehousing. It has been different types of manufacturing and warehousing, but it has always been manufacturing and warehousing. So I think that covered the pieces. I addressed Mr. Bottomley's comment about her being trespassed, and I addressed the point about that it has always been a manufacturing facility. So that's all I needed to say.
Thank you, Todd.
May I respond?
Madam Chair? So I don't know.
I think I need to be able to defend myself.
It needs to be brief because we're already.
Yes. I went into the building, the door was wide open. I merely went in to ask them to close the doors. There was nobody around, the door was wide open. I asked them to close the doors, I left. And with regard to his other claim, that incident happened before I had the arrest, the notice of trespass from the state police. I went over, as I have done a number of times, and as other people have, to try to determine where the smell was coming from. And I went over to poke my nose around and see if I could figure out where the smell was coming from. I have no other purpose for trespassing. And believe me, I will never trespass again, but I did not trespass subsequent to the trespass notice. That is not true.
I just need to respond. For clarification, I did not say that she has been on the property after the trespass was issued. It all happened on Wednesday or Thursday, and I believe the trespass took effect this week.
Yes, I have the letter right here. I had a notice from this visit from the state police because I'm such a threat to
And that's-
society.
Dr. Lepre has his hand up. Dr. Lepre.
So this is an open meeting and it's recorded. So, you know, there's no need to clarify, I don't think, on either of your parts. I think that ultimately Greenfield is an mixed industrial and residential place and has been since its inception, which has causes problems. And I think that both of you have stated your cases. I would ask, if this is intermittent, and this is for clarification for my purposes, if this is intermittent, as you're saying, and the smell is happening at hours where seemingly the business is not in production, has there been any thought that there is a different cause for this somewhere else in the community or in the area? Only because there are a lot of mixed industrial places around that could be causing a smell. And if he's making, to your point, a pumpkin latte candle and you're not smelling pumpkin latte, is there that possibility? Again, I understand. I don't think and I might be wrong on that, but the back and forth, I don't know that it necessarily, like, it's not a situation that any of us on the board have the immediate ability to believe or not believe. Like, I think you both present good cases, and it's a question of really trying to negotiate this, and clearly this is a neighbor issue that we can potentially play a role in. But that was just my thought. Has there been any evaluation that this is coming from somewhere other than the aromatics building? I'll back away now.
Thank you, Dr. Lepre. Madam Chair, I know there's one person that wanted to make public comment. Is that okay?
That is fine.
Mr. Ayers?
Hi, good evening. Thank you for allowing public comments. I realize that the meeting has gone way over time, and I'll try to be brief. I appreciate the fact that you recognize that there is combined sewer overflows during high rain events in the city of Greenfield. And I think that there's more that the board could be doing to address that issue. Specifically, every time it rains more than an inch or two in Greenfield, we have raw sewage being discharged or partially treated sewage being discharged into the Deerfield River. And there are other overflows. There were at least 5 that were noted in the DEP enforcement order, but there are probably numerous other ones that have not been identified. And it's a bigger issue, and it's something that the city needs to deal with, because every time you flush the toilet, you're flushing your feces into the local streams. And, if it's raining. So that's something that we all need to address as a community. We should not, as a community, even though people think we're an old industrial city, and of course, sewage used to be discharged directly untreated at one point, but that was a long time ago, and things have changed, and we have a lot of laws that are meant to protect against pollution of nature and the environment. So it's a bigger issue. I understand that it's great that that the public is notified about this, but that's the absolute minimum requirement by law, that there be a notification. We should strive to do more than the absolute minimum. We should have real-time reporting of sewage overflows on the website, either on the Board of Health website or the DPW website, so that people know if they flush the toilet, they're flushing it into the river. And that's something that could be done, but it's going to require putting in some modern equipment instead of the 1980s vintage equipment that our wastewater treatment plant has. And now is the time to address this issue because of the federal infrastructure law that will be providing billions of dollars for improvements in wastewater treatment. So I hope that the Board of Health will take an active role in addressing this larger issue in Greenfield. It's something that has been neglected for decades, and we have an opportunity now to address it in a more comprehensive manner, especially considering the funding that is going to be available. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ayers. Just to respond, I did speak to Director Warner today. He came by my office, and we were talking about that exact thing. So I'm going to be following up with him to discuss how that can happen. So that's already been in the discussion pool. Thank you. Let me just see. We just had one more thing on the chat that Ms. Griswold said there is no question that the odor from aromatic fillers is coming from that facility. Madam Chair, what would you like to do now?
I think we've covered everything. Thank you for everyone coming out tonight and speaking. We will not be having an August meeting. Our next meeting will be September 27th at 5 p.m. So I will motion to adjourn the meeting.
I get that motion.
All right. All in favor?
Bye.
Aye.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
One.